The rain was falling like whispered secrets against the old windows, and the flickering light of the fireplace cast golden shadows that danced across the walls, while I stood there, wrapped in the silence of a moment that had waited too long to arrive. His eyes never left mine, and I felt something shift in the air between us, something tender, something aching, something that had lived in silence for far too long. He stepped closer, not with urgency, but with a slow reverence, as though he knew that anything rushed would break the spell that now held us both hostage. And when he reached out his hand, it trembled just slightly enough to betray the storm. He held back inside his chest. I didn't move at first, not because I didn't want to, but because I wanted to feel every second of the space closing between us. I wanted to remember the moment his fingertips finally brushed my skin, like a breath, like a promise. And when they did, the warmth of him spilled into me like dawn, spilling through closed shutters, and the ache I had buried so deep came rushing up like water. Through cracks in a dam, he whispered my name once, so soft, it felt like it came from a dream, and I felt the weight of years lift as his arms wrapped around me, pulling me into him, not with hunger, but with the ache of a man who had waited too long to hold what he could never forget. And in that silence, in the cradle of his arms, the world ceased to matter. The rain, the fire, the wind beyond the glass all faded into nothing, because here with him, time unraveled, and all that remained was the beating of two hearts, finally brave enough to find each other. I tilted my head to look up at him, and his lips hovered just above mine, his breath warm and uncertain, and everything in me screamed for him to close the space. And when he finally did, when his lips found mine, it was not fire, it was not thunder. It was a quiet surrender, a falling, a melting like snow against skin, and the taste of him was everything I remembered and everything I never could have imagined. His hands were in my hair, now gently tugging me closer, as though he needed to feel the whole of me pressed against him, to believe that I was real, and I gave in. I let go of the fear, the past, the waiting, and let myself be held by him completely. And as I buried my face against his neck, I felt his pulse fast and wild like mine, and I whispered his name just once, because it felt like the only truth I knew. But then, in the stillness, in the warmth, in the perfect moment, the door creaked open. The sound was soft, barely more than a breath of wood and air, but it sliced through the moment like lightning through calm sky. And I froze, not in fear, but in disbelief, because the world outside of him had returned, and it brought with it the weight of everything we had forgotten in the heat of our closeness. His arms stayed around me for a second longer, as if holding me tighter could keep the world at bay, but we both knew the illusion had shattered. We turned slowly together, still touching, still breathing the same heavy air, and there in the doorway stood the one person we had never meant to hurt. Her eyes wide, her lips parted, her expression a mixture of pain and confusion, and something more, something like betrayal, though no words had yet been spoken, and I felt the echo of my heartbeat against his chest grow louder, as if my body knew before my mind that nothing would be the same again. She didn't speak, not at first, and neither did we, because what could be said when the truth had already filled the room? Louder than any confession, he let go of me, not abruptly, not harshly, but gently, like releasing something fragile and sacred. And I took a step back, though every part of me ached to stay close to him. Her gaze shifted between us, slowly, methodically, as though trying to stitch together a picture from broken glass. And then she asked the question, not with anger, not with rage, but with the kind of softness that hurts more than shouting how long, and the silence that followed was worse than the question itself, because we both knew what it meant. We both knew what we had risked and what we had crossed, and I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught somewhere deep in my throat, where guilt and longing fought for space. He stepped forward, then not toward her, but beside me, as if to say he wouldn't deny what had passed between us, and I felt a strange mix of sorrow and pride rise in me, because in that moment, he chose truth over safety. And I knew even if it meant losing something precious, he wouldn't hide. And she looked at him, then really looked, and something in her eyes shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding, or maybe acceptance, that love does not always bloom in the places we plan. And she nodded once slowly, then turned and walked away, leaving the door open behind her, letting the cold air wash into the room where warmth had just lived. I turned to him, unsure of what to say, unsure if what we had survived the weight of what had just happened, but he reached for my hand, lacing his fingers with mine, with a steadiness that told me he was still here, still with me. And though the door had opened and truth had rushed in, I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something harder, something deeper, something real.